welcome to Thrashcast, another episode. This is episode 32, I believe. Ken, do I got that right?
You got
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
32.
With me and my cohorts here, introduced to you Ken and Billy, and we have a special guest. Ken and Billy, how are you guys doing today?
Yeah,
Good.
we're good and ready to go.
And we have a special guest, Jason Deaville from over at Allfather's joining us. He's subbing in. We had announced last week that Kim would be on, but Kim has had a work conflict. So luckily, we were able to. Jason was able to pick up the ball and run with it. Jason, how are you this evening?
I am good. I'm great, guys. Thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it. The last time I had a blast with you guys. What did we do last time? I think we
Prong.
did
Wrong.
We did
Prong.
prom.
Prong. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good time. So I'm happy to be
Absolutely.
back.
Cool.
Awesome. And since then, Jason, why don't you talk about your new site you've got co-founded there? Why don't you tell everybody what that's all about?
Sure. So Kim and I, we launched our brand new online metal webzine, Allfather Metal. Um, we've been working for other sites and other zines for many years, and we thought it was about time that maybe we tried out ourselves, be our own bosses, and see what happens. And we have you lovely gents who are contributing with some awesome content. So thank you for being part of Allfather. We really appreciate it. I love this you scratch my back, I scratch your type
Oh
thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
brotherhood, a
It's the
brother and a
brotherhood.
sisterhood. Yeah.
Yeah, the brotherhood and sisterhood of metal. So yeah, we've been up for about maybe just over about 2 months now. Initially, we had a lot of issues with our Facebook page, but we got that resolved, and we're quickly gaining steam. I think we're too shy of 700 followers,
Nice.
which
Nice.
is pretty good for only being up a month and a half, 2 months. So yeah, and we've had a lot of great response. So onward and upward.
And where can everybody find you?
You can go to our website at www.allfathermetal.com. You can visit our Facebook page, Allfather Metal, and our Instagram page, Allfather Metal, as well. And we also have a YouTube channel where we post our interviews and other video content, which is Allfather something YouTube. But you can find that on the Facebook.
Awesome. Awesome. And leading into that, I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners out there for all the support they've given us. Check out All Father, give them a like, give them definitely follow. You can find us if you're new to us at Horror Metal Sounds on YouTube at keng.2864. We're also available on Spotify, and we're also available on Rumble, which is a service that is very similar to YouTube. So check us out on all three of those streaming and viewing services and listening services, and check us out as well as. Ken and Rich are always working on our shorts that we have for our new shorts and all kinds of neat stuff. There's some clips, so make sure you're keeping that top of mind as well. And like I say, we love the brother and sisterhood, but between All Father, and I think it's going to be a great kinship between us. So definitely give them a follow as well. So this album, oh, we've got one hell of an album ready to talk about now, to dive into. We're going to be putting on our Judas Priest hats. Just a quick, before I get into the questions, I'm not going to go into a bio of Judas Priest. There it is
Yeah,
there.
Billy's got it.
Billy's got it. I think everybody's got it. That's
Yeah.
wicked though, Billy. Love that artwork. But before we get into the questions, just a quick bio on this album. I'm not necessarily going to get into Priest history because, everybody's heard it so many times. But this album was released in September 14th of 1990. Kind of interesting why we're doing this album, just quickly, is the fact that it is probably Priest's closest album to represent the thrash genre, and really interesting. It came out in 1990, a real strong year leading up for thrash and death metal, and before the dark years that come up a couple of years later. So kind of a really neat situation to release. It's their 12th album. This was their last album with Rob Halford, obviously. He left, and then they did two albums with Tim Ripper Owens in the mid to late 90s. This was the first album with Scott Travis on drums, and I think that kind of ties in a lot to the sound that they had with it. But just to quickly go through, obviously we had Rob on vocals, KK and Glenn on guitar, Ian Hill on bass, and Travis on drums. So this album hit number 26 on the Billboard 200, so really high ranking album for them at the time, super popular. It went gold in Canada and gold in the US. Painkiller itself is probably, we're going to talk about it, but probably one of the thrashiest tracks that they do, and would rival any thrash band out there. So we'll be getting into that. It's absolutely wicked. And obviously, it was the last album for Rob, so a bit of a unfortunate milestone in their career there. And well, we'll lead into the questions. Question number one, and we'll get our guest to go first. How do you think, Jason, this album holds up today? What did you think of the album when it came out, and how do you think it holds up today?
Well, I think you touched on it there, and no, I'll just say that initially, my first experience with Judas Priest, like personally, like buying an album from them was Ram It Down, and I really loved that album at the time. I got it on vinyl, but I go way back with Judas Priest because my dad and all his brothers, my uncles, were all big Priest and Maiden fans. So, we'd have these family get-togethers and little parties where, family friends would come over when I was a youngster, maybe around 7 or 8 years old. They would spin Priest and Maiden, and I just remember falling in love with Priest at that time, and then then flipping through my dad's record collection as a youngster. Those Priest albums, the cover art always stood out to me. You
Yeah.
know, I think in the mid '80s with Screaming for Vengeance and
Oh,
I was into the Transformers at the time, and I remember looking at those album covers and being like, Are these Transformers or what?" Because they do have a very Transformers feel. Um, but yeah, Ram It Down was my first experience personally buying an album with them, and then obviously getting into thrash in the late '80s and '90s, and then Priest dropping this album. It was just I think it was as good as any thrash album that dropped in the early '90s, especially '90, which Jim you said mentioned was a banner year for thrash.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I have to wonder. I've never read anything about this, but what did all those thrash bands think at the time of this? Because I think Judas Priest at the time was an old school band, even
Yeah.
in 1990. What the hell were these guys thinking? Like Testament and Slayer, and like, holy shit, these old motherfuckers are coming in here and dropping this album that rivals any of the youngsters doing the thing what they were doing at the time. So I think it really put Priest on the map as far as, maybe people who weren't necessarily into their sound prior to this, but were into thrash or heavier stuff. I think they really appealed to those people, and it just expanded their fan base just
Yeah.
by leaps and bounds. I mean, that year they got a tour together with Testament and Megadeth. I think Testament was touring before either Practice What You Preach or Souls of Black, and Megadeth was touring with Rust in Peace, and Priest obviously was Painkiller, and it was just, I think, one of the best tours of that year. And yeah, I think it still holds up today. It doesn't sound dated at all to me, not even technically, not even the production, sonically. It sounds incredible. So yeah, probably one of Priest's best albums, and one of the albums that to me is timeless.
Awesome. Bill, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, I guess just some history. So I've always was a fan of Priest. I wouldn't say they were ever my favorite band, but even like when I was like maybe 15, I was listening to Judas Priest. So always knew of them, had most of their stuff on cassettes. And probably my least favorite. I know, Jason, you said you liked it, but I wasn't the biggest fan of like Turbo and Ram It Down. Now, mind you, I really like those albums today.
Mhm.
But when they first came out, I didn't like them as much, but they've really grown on me. So I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't expecting much when Painkiller came out, but oh my God, I think it was probably a video that I saw for actually Painkiller, and it just blew me away. Right? I mean, it was amazing, nothing like what I expected, and so long story short, it's actually my favorite Priest album by far. Definitely like the harder edge to it for sure. I think almost everything is memorable. There's maybe like a track that hasn't aged well towards the end on the album, but I think just about everything's aged very well. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
And Ken?
Yeah, same here. Like I've always liked them as a band. I wasn't I'm not as fond over the 70s there. I was really got into them in the 80s when Screaming for Vengeance came
Yeah.
out. I totally love that album. I actually like Turbo. I know it's more cheesy 80s. I like Ram It Down as well.
Good
But
album.
yeah, when Painkiller came out, it's one of those albums where for me, first thing I saw was the cover art, which I absolutely loved. And then you get like it's a timeless album because it's just filled with so much metallic glory, and it's a near perfect record. Almost every track is great. I agree with Billy. There's probably a couple that are so, but you will never go wrong with this album. It's probably Rob's best vocal performance in my mind. He's so immediate sounding on the record. I love the lyrics. This is one of my favorite albums for lyrics. There's a lot of elements to horror movies, to monsters and creatures. I think it's great.
Mhm.
I totally love this album. So in my mind, it still stands up to this day.
Wicked. I mean, very similar to you guys. I got Screaming for Vengeance was the first, well, actually, not the first one I owned, but the first one I bought. I got it as part of Columbia House with that buy 10 for a penny. My
Yeah.
mom did it for us. Me and my sister got to split. So that was one of my picks. And I was like, oh, it just blew me away. But when I was 9 or 10, I think it would have been 1980. So it would have been 9, went to a flea market. Was buying an album. I've told the story, so I'm going to tell it again. But just quickly, I was buying Saturday Night Fever, the double album, John Travolta, the Bee Gees, embarrassingly. But one of the albums was missing, and Sin After Sin was in it, as opposed to the second album of Saturday Night Fever. So when I got home, I was like, oh, what is this? Anyways, so I got immersed, and I played the hell out of it because it was I only had a couple of albums at the time on this little record player, and I didn't have the sleeve or anything, had no idea, just Judas Priest Sin After Sin. So obviously that is my favorite album for that reason. I've played it probably more times than anything, but that was out in 1977, and here I am as a kid, 9 or 10 years old in 1980, just playing that. My parents first checking it out, like, Judas Priest, what is this? And it said on it, and they listened to it first, deemed it okay, and it was just heavy metal, but they didn't know who the hell they were or either at the time. So, my dad was into stuff like Roger Whittaker and Ease English, so and Freddie Fender, and my mother was more into the Beatles, so it was kind of funny. That's all, but that's my little story. But yeah, I mean, this is a timeless album, and I think you guys hit it on the head. This is a gateway album for new metal fans. This should be shipped. Like, if you're a new metal fan, you should be able to go somewhere, put your name in, and they ship you samples. And this would be a sample song that you get in a pack that's issued to you as part of you becoming a metalhead. I mean, this is one of
No
those
kidding,
songs.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what they should have. They should send you nowadays. I mean, they can stream it, but it would be cool to send you something. You get it, and these are tracks you need to listen to, and then you decide where you want to go from there. But I agree with that, and yeah, Turbo, and I agree with both you guys with Turbo. I didn't like it at the time. My girlfriend liked it, so I knew that was my barometer of that it wasn't that great. But I do like it now. I mean, I think it's a great album now. I
Turbo's
really
a great
like
album. I love Turbo.
Yeah.
It's got that real like 80s vibe to it.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
so 80s.
not in a metal way either. Well, in a metal way, but also in I don't know, it just screams the 80s.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you know, every band went through that. You had Ozzy with like No Rest for the Wicked or Ultimate
Yeah,
Sin,
yeah.
where he kind of started wearing those moo and stuff. And then you had like
Yeah, yeah.
you had even Saxon with one of my favorite albums. You know, the one with the it's leaving me now. With the one with the girl with the apple on it.
Oh,
Innocence is no excuse.
yeah, yeah.
That was my. I had an old hippie guy tell me to buy that, and all my friends were like, "It's on Motley Crue. What are you doing?" And I took it home, and I was like, "This is freaking awesome, man!" Like, you know, went back and bought all the rest of their catalog when I saved up my allowances. So yeah, everybody sort of went through that phase.
Hey, so Jim,
Yeah,
I find that so interesting, that point you made, what your parents listened to.
yeah,
So you mentioned Freddie Fender and Roger Whittaker.
yes.
That's all I heard growing up. Like Freddie Fender was my mom's favorite, and
Oh,
Roger Whittaker was my dad's favorite. So it's funny that it both turned both of us into lifelong metalheads. We ran into complete opposite direction.
well, every time I hear "The Last Teardrop Falls" by Freddie Fender,
Yeah,
man,
I
it's just
know it
like it
well.
brings me back.
I know it well.
That's wicked. That's wicked.
Too
Um,
fun.
yeah, I'm gonna meld this question into a couple of questions just to because I've got three or four here. But this was Rob's last album. Um, what do you guys think? I guess A of the two Ripper era albums with Jugulator and Demolition. And do you guys think like Rob went on to do his band Fight right afterwards, which was more of a thrashier kind of direction than Judas Priest took? Do you think and you know, and then Angel of Retribution came out where Rob came back, and they kind of didn't like. I would have liked to seen more. What do you guys think? Would have you guys like to see more of a thrash direction? Had number one Rob stayed in the band, or even I guess with Tim, and what did you guys think of those two albums in his absence? We'll go with our guest first again, there, Jason.
Well, as far as Jugulator, I don't know. I thought it's not my favorite album, Judas Priest
Mm-hmm.
album by any means. I am a fan of Tim. I think he's a great vocalist,
Me
and I
too.
think he did an incredible job. He had some huge shoes to fill. So, I mean, I can't imagine the pressure that was on him. And I think he did an incredible job. I think it just comes down to the music on those two albums. Honestly, I don't think it's Tim's performance. I just think they lost a little something musically when Rob left.
Yeah.
And, Jugulator, it does have, I think it, it's a worthy follow-up to Painkiller. um, it does have thrashier moments. I think there's a harder edge to the album, um, and it's intense. It's a bit daring. Songs like Bloodstained and the title track, they're, I think, have some really crushing riffs, and they're powerful and gritty vocals from Tim. And I think he just brought kind of a new, fresh, raw energy to some lackluster songs.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Demolition,
Yeah.
nah, I don't know, man. It's a bit more modern sounding, darker, bit heavier approach, a bit too groovy for my liking, maybe a bit too many industrial elements thrown in there. It didn't feel like a Judas Priest album to me as much as Jugulator did. And then Rob's comeback with Angel of Retribution, I think is an incredible album.
Mm-hmm.
I think had that been the follow-up to Painkiller, um, you know, uh, I don't know. I just it's too bad that that wasn't the follow-up. Not to say that Jugulator and Demolition aren't okay in their own right.
No, I agree. I like Tim's voice too, and I have his solo stuff. I really, really like it. Really like him. Ken, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Drugulator for me is a bit of a guilty pleasure. I don't mind it. I guess it has its moments, but I agree with Jason. It's like it's all right, but I don't think Tim quite lives up to the reputation of Rob. He tries, and I think
Yeah.
he is a great vocalist on his own. But when you get to like Jugular and you get to Demolition, Demolition is like, okay, it's worn thin after one album. So it's not a surprise that he only lasted in the band for the two albums. And Rob comes back for Angel Retribution, which I don't mind. I don't know if it's a worthy follow up to Painkiller, but it's all right. It has its moments. I kind of
How
felt
many
that
how many years separated those two
Oh,
albums?
geez,
those
that was
12. Oh, it's like
yeah.
7 years, I think.
Oh,
Between Painkiller and Angel?
no,
Oh
between
no, it's long. It's more than that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's more than that.
I
They
got it
brought out
here.
they brought
So
out Jugulator in '96, so that was a
Yeah,
6 year difference. I think it was
2005.
2005.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it
2005.
was
Yeah, yeah,
15 years
yeah.
between
yeah.
Painkiller and that. Yeah.
So you're not gonna retain that style of Painkiller. I don't care who you are. It's just because the bands are
Well,
gonna
yeah, they
keep.
had grown 15 years,
Yeah.
aged
That's what I
15
mean.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like they've grown, so it's not gonna happen. I mean, sure, okay. So Rob creates Fight, and Fight. I like the first Fight album, but
Would you
again, that
choose
style was
would you
that.
choose Fight over Jugulator Demolition? Anything by Fight?
I think the first
I
album I
would.
would. Fight
Yeah.
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Fight a lot because it's like groove thrash. It's good, but again, that style kind of wears thin for me after one album. I know they only had the two albums, but I
The
didn't mind
thing
it.
with
I actually was that.
I was going to say the thing with Fight for me, I forgot to mention when I was speaking, is that
Yeah,
I enjoyed it too, but I always thought something in the back of my mind was always like, "N- this is this is a parody, not a
yeah,
parody.
mhm,
Maybe parody is not the right word because I don't think it was intentional, but I think it was like a second-rate Pantera. It never clicked with me because of that.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I know they gave it their all and stuff, but maybe the marketing, maybe the whole ethos and aesthetic of the band just came across to me as a bit cheesy.
yeah. That's a good point. I could very much see that. I didn't really think it. I don't know. I don't mind it. I'll say that I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you guys. I actually preferred when Rob did two. I preferred
That's a
two
great
beyond
album.
five. I totally love that album because he did something that was entirely different to what he was doing. And I
Mhm.
thought, bravo, because you're kind of, he's a gay man who comes out of the closet. So we get that about him. He goes with the makeup and he goes for the whole kind of glam goth look. And he fits right in. So it's almost like a Marilyn Manson kind of play on
Yeah.
an album. I love that album. I was really into
I
it.
do too.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great album
Voyeurs.
because it's daring. It's something that you wouldn't expect from Rob.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's a mixed bag when after I think really after Painkiller, everything's a mixed bag. Some of it works and some of it doesn't. It just depends on your I guess your tolerance and what jives for you as a music
Yeah.
fan. So something like me, I like Chew. I'm sure, like say Billy may not like Chew because I think you've mentioned that Billy that you weren't really a fan of Chew.
Not the biggest, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. So everyone has a different kind of tolerance to what they think works for them. But so I think it's a mixed bag, personally speaking.
Bill, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, you guys tackled a couple questions there. So, um, I guess going back to Ripper. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Ripper. Really like him in KK's Priest. But I think if we step back, like I agree with Jason on this part. I mean, at the end of the day, or maybe even before I go there, like he was doomed from the start. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
Judas Priest. I mean, Rob is synonymous with Priest. Like whoever they picked wasn't going to work. I mean, Priest was playing small clubs that were half full
Yeah.
on those two tours for Jugulator and Demolition. Like it all fell apart. And so same thing with, maybe not to the same degree, but Blaze is a great singer, Blaze Bailey, and he was doomed like replacing Nate.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah. It didn't
it
work.
wasn't going to work, right?
Yeah,
Those two frontmen, Rob and Bruce, are like two of the greatest frontmen in metal of all time. So that was a problem. Like in terms of Jugulator and Demolition, I mean, I'm not the biggest like fan, but agree with Jason. Like I don't blame Ripper. Like, it's not his fault.
No.
I just think the direction of the songs didn't really appeal to me. And given, Priest went from arenas to clubs to half-filled clubs, it wasn't, a lot of people didn't like it. So then you get Rob's return. I liked Angel of Retribution. I like about half the songs. I think are great. Half are not bad. So I think it's a decent album. But Tim, I just think he fits so well with KK's Priest.
Yeah.
I really enjoy his singing there. And then when it comes to Rob returning, yeah, I mean, I like most of the later stuff for
Mhm.
that I got him. I don't like Nostradamus. That's a bit too
Yeah.
loaded and overdone. But otherwise, like, I think Firepower is amazing.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
It's a
wicked.
great metal album. I think Invisible Shield is really good. The latest Priest. So other than Nostradamus, I kind of like everything. And then I totally agree with Jason. I think a Fight is sort of a Pantera clone. It just didn't work for me. I think Rob's best album was his solo album, Retribution.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
think that
Yeah.
was the best work he did while he was off. Maybe it's because it's most like Priest, and that's why I like it. I don't know.
I know that at the time when he had left Priest, Rob really got into Norwegian black metal, and he started hanging out with all these black metal bands and
Oh yeah.
figures from Norwegian black metal like Emperor and Satyricon and all these bands. And there was talk for a long time that he was going to do some work with Emperor, who's one of the biggest Norwegian black metal bands. And
Wow.
often you'll see him wearing the shirts, and but it never came to fruition. But there was a lot of talk at one point that something was in the works between that band and Rob. So it's unfortunate that never came to be because it might have been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think
For sure.
I mean I agree with you guys. I think for me the split was confusing as a young person. I was like wanted Priest and Rob's Priest. So then you have this other guy come in and I think he's super talented. I have a lot of his solo stuff. It's the same thing with Maiden. I think Blaze Bailey's amazing. And I
Wolfsbane's awesome.
Oh yeah,
Like,
and
yeah.
his solo out his latest album's phenomenal. He tells a story. The guy survived a massive heart attack, but at the time when I was a kid, I remember looking at it. And even the logo wasn't kind of correct, and I just felt like it just wasn't. I didn't give it maybe enough chance. I like those two albums now more than I did then, but I loved Fight. I mean, the voice of Judas Priest was in Fight, but I'm also a huge Pantera fan. The latter stuff of Pantera after like Cowboys, and I got to be honest, I love the two Fight albums, but I also loved two Voyeurs by Two. That is a landmark
Yeah.
of an album, and I think it's really underrated. And
Yeah.
I think it raised a lot of eyebrows back then. And I love how Halford's solo stuff too. So a big fan. That Billy brought it up. A great question for you, Jason and Ken. What do you guys think of the new album, Invincible Shield? I love it. It is probably one of my favorite releases this year. It's like a return. There's a lot of nostalgia there, but I think that's going to be one that I'm going to put up there, like in my top top 5 to top 7 Judas Priest albums of all time. Bill, what's your thought? Like, sorry, Bill, I already got your thoughts. Sorry, Ken, what do you think of it?
I like the Invisible Shield as well. For some reason, I still like Firepower a little bit more. I don't know. Invisible Shield's great. Like, don't get me wrong. I've listened to it quite a bit. I really enjoy it as well. It may end up becoming a classic over time. I still think Firepower is just, I don't know. There's something about Firepower that I just like a little bit more. There's a bit more focus there on Firepower than you get with Invincible Shield, but they're both great albums. You can't go wrong with either of them, really.
Yeah,
What
I
did you?
totally agree.
Yeah,
Firepower is slightly better, I think.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jason, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. Firepower, I really, really enjoyed. Didn't get as much into Invincible Shield, but uh, they're decent albums. You can hear their age on both of them, but I mean that's a given, especially with Rob's vocals. I don't think he quite has what he had in the Painkiller days.
Yeah.
That's no slight on him. I mean, he still gives it his all. I don't know. Have you guys caught them live recently?
I saw
And
them
can Rob pull that off still?
pretty good. I saw him with Queensryche in Halifax for the COVID makeup tour there. I think it was not last year, the year before, the end of the year before. So that was a really good show. I thought he pulled it off. You know, his movement's a little more detained on stage, but that's,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
how old is Rob? Rob's in his mid 70s. So, you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
Yeah, I saw them a few times. I'd say he's not as good as he was. Like he struggles. I think also with Rob, it depends on when you get him, right? If you get him at the beginning of the tour, he's stronger. If you get him at the end of the tour, he could be a little weaker. Like I saw him at Vakken maybe like 2 years ago, and they hadn't been touring. He sounded fantastic because his voice was well rested. Then I saw him in Philly, probably that tour you did, Jim, and he had a cold. He had a bit of a cold, so he was the exact opposite that night. But I guess that's expected, right? The man's up there in age. It's
Yeah.
no wonder he's still doing that every night.
Yeah.
Billy, I got a question for you. I have a friend who lives in just outside of Pittsburgh. So he was telling me, because I was talking to him just about Judas Priest, and he was telling me he saw, I think, the Demolition tour in Philly. And there was like, he said, like, you know, it was so weird. Like KK Downing kind of walked by him to get to the stage. It was like 300 people, very small. Was that a show you saw? Like, did you see any of the club shows like that for either of those?
No,
Oh.
and Demolition, I was still in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I didn't see either of those tours with Ripper.
Oh, okay. I just thought, yeah. Then again, would be probably in the late '90s. Yeah, you'd probably still be you. When did you move to Philly? In the 2000s.
I went to Philly in 2015.
Oh, okay.
Back
Yeah.
last year.
Okay.
Like you have to think what these guys were thinking at the time. Like
Oh,
you
I
keep
know.
mentioning, they're playing arena tours on Painkiller, and just a few short years later,
Yeah.
like half filled clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like unbelievable. What's that movie with Marky Mark?
Oh yeah,
Wahlberg.
Rockstar.
Rockstar.
Yeah, Rockstar, which isn't it loosely based on this
Yes.
actual?
It's very
Okay.
loosely based. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer Aniston, Marky Mark.
Mark.
That's a good point. Yeah, that was loosely based. The last question, and then we'll get into the album, is just the album art. And Ken, I'm going to start with you. What's your thoughts? You definitely are kind of
Art
album
guy?
art expert of the group to some degree.
Yeah, so like this is a really good album, but the artist Mark Wilkinson is a UK artist. He's very much known for the master of the airbrush. So he airbrushed dozens of covers. Like he did stuff for I can't even say it. Why can't I say it tonight? Million, Fish, Priest, of course. Iron Maiden's Book of Souls, which he did. He also did some comics for Judge Dredd, so 2080. He did stuff, but his cover art is on every album that he worked on is so great. Like I've worked with an airbrush. I have a couple airbrushes, and I've tried for years to perfect that style, but he has it down pat. But he's a fantastic artist, and when you see a Priest album, and you know it's like comparing Mark Wilkinson to, say, Derek Riggs. You know exactly who you're getting and what you're getting. And Painkiller to me is just an absolute killer of an album.
Did he do any art prior to that for them? Or was this his first? Yeah?
No. He did like Screaming for Vengeance.
Oh, he okay. Wow.
He did Turbo.
Do you know if those were not airbrushed, were they? Those
all
albums too?
airbrushed.
All airbrushed. Okay.
Yeah, he did about
Because
a
you know
handful of covers.
those two albums, Screaming, especially, it for some reason I never knew it was airbrush, because it kind of looks like at the time it has that 80s kind of digital, that digital thing that they had in the 80s, like not 8-bit, but something similar to that. It has that feel to it, and I always thought that's what made that art so interesting.
It's all airbrush. He airbrushed everything, which is
cool.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. Has he done anything post Painkiller for Priest?
I'm not sure what he's doing today. I know he still does artwork and stuff, and he does private commissions. I
Right.
think
You
he's
said he
mainly
did Book of
doing,
Souls too, which was more
yeah,
recent,
yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Book of Souls was a kind of a different style. It wasn't airbrushed. It looks like he painted it. It's you can tell. But I don't mind that. I don't mind that cover as well. That cover is
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Billy, what's your thoughts on the album art? You had the album there. What, do you love it or what?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess art's always subject, right? Like,
Yep.
I'm not an artist by any means. I never thought much of it, to be honest. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It just is what it is. Like, it doesn't get me too excited. So yeah.
It's so neat album art because album art was, I mean, I think it's massively important. I think having an album with great album art even today is massively important, but I think it was so important back then when you were on that record rack with hundreds of other records and you had to stand out and come up with something really cool. And a lot of bands come up with their mascots and that sort of thing, but you want to stand out. And I mean, that's, I think, like, again, going back to what we were talking about, it's interesting that, like, the young people today don't have that, where they kind of, you can already know what's coming out because you get the singles pre-released on your phone through the streaming service, bing bang boom, see it on YouTube, you're right there, you're always 1 second behind everything, and that's it. You don't have that feeling of waiting for it, and to some degree, and that feeling of walking in and seeing it for the first time and being like, oh man, I'm holding this in your hands. I think that,
Or lining up for it.
yeah,
For, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Even the Black Album, and when they released that, there was that midnight, they had
Yeah.
that midnight where they would play
Launch.
in the
Yeah.
record store and you could line up for it. It
I
was
was
so
there.
cool.
I was
Yeah.
there for that.
Yep. Unfortunately, me too. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Great, guys. Great questions. Last question I'm just throwing in. I know the questions are taking a while, but what do you guys think? Billy touched on it. What do you think, Billy, of KK's Priest?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Like, I enjoy it. Like, I think on two fronts, I think the two albums are great, right?
Mhm.
Sure, they sound like Priest, but KK was from Priest, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was a big part of those songs. Um, and when I saw them, like, KK would actually say, "Hey, these are songs that I'm playing from Priest that I didn't get a chance to play much with Priest because
Mhm.
for whatever reason, the bandmates had other alternatives or didn't want to play it. So from his angle, he's playing stuff from Priest that he wants to, and you got Tim who was in Priest.
Yeah.
When they play, so I guess what I'm getting at is when you see them live, half the songs are new and half are Priest covers. So I think the Priest covers are very good, and I actually love the KK Priest, the two albums. So they're very strong, and Tim's great to see live.
Mhm.
Like, voice was amazing, and Tim is he's got a great sense of humor,
Mhm.
a great charisma. Like, it just kind of works, right? Even seeing KK, like, the man's like in his 70s and he's jumping up and down on risers on both sides of the stage. And when you see Priest, like, they're not the guitar, even Richie, who's a bit younger, Faulkner, like, he just stands still for the most
Mhm.
plays. So it's just on all fronts, I think KK is great. I think great original material. They cover the Priest with respect, and they were both in Priest, and they're entertaining live. So what more can you ask for?
Jason, what's your thoughts on KK Priest?
Well, I enjoyed the Sinner Rides Again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a huge fan, but it's definitely brings back some of the elements of early Priest, and it gives Tim another chance to shine.
Exactly.
And I think he should definitely shine because the man has an amazing talent. So yeah,
Agree.
it's
And Ken, your thoughts on KK's Priest?
Yeah, I liked them both too. I
Yeah.
like both albums quite a bit. I heard a recent interview that Tim did on the Rageaholic YouTube channel, and he sat down with Razor and talked about his life and stuff he's doing, and he's a really level-headed guy. So I love the fact that he's come back to do a second round of kind of Priest, but with one of the original guitarists, and it really works. Now I haven't seen him live, but from what I've heard on both records, yeah, they're
Yeah.
solid. I have no problem with either record. So yeah, I'm happy that Tim's a part of it and that the legacy kind of is continuing. So yeah, it works for me.
Awesome. I agree. And he's really active on social media too. Like he'll like comments if you're on a site and you're liking it or whatever. He's pretty vocal that way. But I mean, he's pretty cool. And I think the fact that, Billy, you brought it up because you've seen them, they're split. What was it? 50-50 Priest and new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, cause you saw them at Wacken, right? As well.
Yeah. I also saw them a few months earlier at Wacken. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, what's really cool is they're not doing the usual Priest roundup of songs. They're doing a lot of stuff that, like Billy said, that are just not, they didn't make the cut for the Priest shows. So that's kind of really neat too. And I think that's pretty cool. So hopefully we get another album out from KK's Priest. That would be awesome.
Yeah. They played Nightcrawler from this album.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
So speaking of this album, great entrance. We're finally getting the album. I mean, my God, we could talk about this for days. It's such a riveting. It's some information here that's awesome, and it's such a storied band. So lots of stories there. But let's delve into this album. I've already gone through kind of the history of it. So track number 1, we're gonna just hand this off to our guest. The first track, Painkiller. Jason, take it away.
Well, I mean, what an introduction for Scott Travis.
Yeah.
Like that intro is just unbelievable and kind of sets the tone for what's going to happen in the rest of the album. Those double bass kicks, I don't think we had ever heard anything like that in Priest. And I just remember when I saw the video, I think the first time I heard anything from Painkiller was the video, which is an iconic video now. But just seeing, I can just remember his kit. That video has that silver kind of tone to it, and this kit looked like a monstrous thing out of hell. And then those double kicks, and I'm just like, this cannot be Judas Priest. This cannot be Judas Priest. But yeah, I mean the guitar work between Glenn and KK, it's super lightning fast. It's got crushing riffs. The song's intensity and energy just continue throughout the entire album, or sorry, the entire song. It never lets up, and actually it just keeps building and building and building. And then we have some of the most I think potent screams from Rob we've ever heard. Blood curdling, epic. And I think Rob was at his pinnacle at this point, and his voice could do no wrong. So, an incredible intro for this album, and a great introduction for Scott for sure.
And Billy, your thoughts? I would assume you love this one. Just thinking.
Yeah, no, for me, easily the best song on the album. And I think Jason nailed the first point I was going to make. The first thing that hit me is Scott Travis, right? The drumming. It just this whole aggressive, like, and tight drumming that was never there before. And you hear it throughout the album, but it's really obvious here. Like, I also like the sound and the style, the production is something you hear right off the bat, because they were using like their producer Tom Allum since 1978. Like, he's done every single album, and this is the first album where they switched it up with somebody named Chris, and his name like Tsang
yes.
I guess it sounds like a Greek name, I guess, but again, I think he may have played a part of this, right? When you've got the same producer since 1978, you switch that up, it's going to make a big impact. Jason hit on it, the killer drum intro, and Rob, man, like on this track in particular, he had another gear here, like both in terms of highs, and this may be his most fierce like vocal delivery ever. So really cool. This thing has like from 210 to 310, just KK and Glenn doing these amazing like guitar lead trade-offs. Like, they're really good at that, but particularly on this song. And again, Jason hit right on it, right? That scream, right, when Rob towards the end, and he just starts shouting, "Pain, pain, killer, kill!" Like it's just this whole level of like, blood curdling like scream. It was so cool. Yeah, great track, great track.
And you bring up a good point with Chris, and I can't pronounce his last name, but he did some albums with Halloween. He did some Anvil albums, Ingve, and some Thin Lizzy albums. So they definitely wanted to, you could see a definite change coming. But Ken, what's your thoughts?
Well, I won't talk about the technical side because you guys have already like hit on all the major points. But for me, lyrically, this is one of my favorite songs because that ties into the idea of this creature that comes down to basically destroy evil in the world and rescue the world from evil. So I love the song for that reason. Some of my favorite lyrics, like through boiling clouds of thunder, blasting bolts of steel, evil's
Yeah.
going under deadly wheels. Wow. I love that. So like it ties into the album cover. So the album cover is the Painkiller. And it's a great song. And yeah, and I think Rob does it justice with the screams and the singing. And it's such a powerful song. It's one of my favorite all-time Priest songs for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it'd probably be in a lot of top 10 lists for top Priest songs, depending on like, I know you're looking at, you're looking at the 1970s Priest, the 1980s Priest, then from 90 on, you have the 90 to the return of Rob. But I think this definitely has a special place for all Priest fans. It's just such an attack on the ears. It's so cool. And for them, I remember when this came out, and it was just such, like, I liked Ram It Down, the album before as well too. It was really good. I wasn't as keen on Turbo prior to that, but this just was like, holy, what a way to start an album. Like, this is just a smashing song. And at any sports game or anything like that, they will play this to get everybody up and going. And it's an adrenaline rush for sure. Great track. And I agree with all you guys, man. That's awesome. So we lead into Hell Patrol. Ken, I finished with you, so I'm going to get your ideas on Hell Patrol.
Yeah, this is a great song too. It's a melodic kind of anthem for sure. Like, so when I hear this song, I just want to like just raise my fist and just pump hard. That's what I feel when I get this song. I love the fact that it's funny because the song is actually about touring and being on the road. So I like the fact how they've sort of used the Hell Patrol as kind of like a metaphor. But it's great. You get this really heavy opening. You get this like coupled by this machine gun rapid fire right from the gate. It's a Priest song, and it's great. It's very memorable. So I love the song.
Awesome. And Bill, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Ken. Like another strong song. It's a change of pace for sure. Like this one's more of a mid-paced. It's a little bit more traditional Judas Priest, but still has a bit of that aggression that this album is, that we like so much about it. So I think that's really cool. Some great guitar chugging. Like Ken, just there's a lot of good melody in the song, both in the vocals, even the guitar solos are quite melodic and very memorable chorus. So just really like good, strong track, a mix of pacing versus the first. So that's cool. And I think Ken mentioned it too. It works well live. I've heard it a few times live. So yeah, I enjoy it. Good track.
Great. Jason, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, not much to add that you guys already didn't speak on, but definitely slightly slower, maybe a bit more powerful pace than the predecessor. It chugs along at a really great pace. For some reason, whenever I hear this song, and even back in the day, it always reminded me, I don't know what it is, but of the Hellraiser movies. In fact, this whole album did. Kind of something about it. It's just dark, foreboding. I don't know. Rob could probably be one of the Cenobites to some degree. Um, and this song really kind of always made me think of that movie, like the Hell Patrol, the Cenobites coming in and just causing havoc. It's interesting. I didn't know that this was a touring song, so it does
Yeah.
make sense that Priest are actually the Hell Patrol.
That's
Um,
right.
so yeah, I really like the song. It's really hard to get out of your head, that chorus. Once you hear it, it's stuck in your head for the entire day.
Wicked. No, that's definitely true. That's awesome. I like it as well. I mean, not much to say. Guys have nailed it, and it is a great touring song, and I think it deserves to be there for sure. Bill, we'll start off with you with track number 3, "All Guns Ablazing."
Yeah, so I think it's another great. I mean, in my mind, the first half of this album is far superior to the second half. I think there's a few weaker tracks in the second half, but we'll get there. Yeah, I love All Guns Are Blazing. It sort of bounces around mid to fast tempo. It's got some good variety. Again, we're not getting the exact same song over and over. The pacings are different. This one's a bit interesting because whereas the first two you actually had like Travis doing drum openings, here
Mhm.
you actually have Rob opening with like a solo vocal, which I think is kind of interesting. It's a bit extreme to hear him like screeching without the music
Mhm.
in the background, but another great chorus, right? The all guns play like it just again just the whole chorus is like an earworm. It totally sticks in with you, very memorable. But again, I think I mentioned there's some great tempo shifts. Like they'll slow down and get heavy for a little bit, and then work their way back up to speed. And again, KK, I mean the guitar duo, great dueling leads here again. So yeah, I think it's a great track.
And Jason, what do you think of "All Guns"?
Um, it's it's a great song,
Yeah.
probably one of my least favorite of the album. I'm not quite sure why that is, but revisiting the album this week, it definitely didn't stand out as the strongest track for me. But that opening scream, as Billy mentioned, definitely um, proves that again, Rob is firing on all cylinders on this album. And I do remember when I did see this tour live, I remember that he matched live what he did on album back then. Like back
Cool.
in '90, he was on top of his game both on the live front and the recorded front. So these songs at that time, the man could do them. He could do them live. I mean, I don't think he ever got into the studio and was told to scream, belt that scream out, and then he was like, "Shit, am I going to be able to do this live?" No, he could do it live, man. And kudos to him. Good song, not my favorite song, but still aggressive. Has a really good unrelenting pace, and matches kind of the intensity of the album.
Awesome. And Ken?
Yeah, I think this song actually complements Hell Patrol because of the fact that
Yeah.
again, they're using this analogy that you're bearing artillery to show how life is fought in the trenches. So it's kind of clever in that regards, and that's what I like about this album as a whole because I think lyrically it's kind of clever. But yeah, it's a great song. Like there's a really nice thunderclap sort of at the end of the song that really complements it. The solos are great. It just soars all the way through. So yeah, it's a pretty good song. I have no problem with it as well.
Yeah, I like it as well. I actually like the back end of the album just as much. I think maybe there should have been some songs moved around a little bit. I kind of towards the end of the album have a kind of a Hellion and Electric Eye kind of feel to the end. So
Right.
maybe should have been maybe I don't know. Anyways, because they started so strong with such a killer song, but. We're heading into Metal Meltdown sorry, Leather Rebel number 4 here. And Ken, you finished last. You start first.
Yeah, I like this song. Like it's one of those songs that sticks in your head. Like just referring to Leather Rebel. It has a really good chorus. The song's all about defiance and individualism, and it's interesting. Like the lyrics kind of discuss the idea of a lone warrior combating the challenges of life. Again, it's another anthemic song about standing strong and remaining true to oneself. So I songs like these I think really bring out what Rob may have been going through in life. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think at this time he was a closeted gay man. I don't think he was physically out of it, or he hadn't announced it. I guess you could assume he's a homosexual, but I think this song really kind of suits what his mindset was. But I like the song as well. For me, it's another really good song that follows All Guns Blazing.
Awesome. Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we discuss the elephant in the room at the time with this song?
Yeah,
As Ken mentioned, I don't think he had come out of the closet at that point, but I mean, all the telltale signs were there, and I think in this song, he's talking about that. He's probably expressing to some degree, and not saying so much. Be yourself, be an individual. Celebrate your individuality and your freedoms and defiance, as Ken mentioned. This song, when I listen to it now, now knowing, um, you know, his persuasion, it reminds me of seedy biker bars, gay biker
yeah,
bars, and
yeah,
glory holes and and things of
yeah.
that nature. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not
No,
knocking it
no,
at all, but we do know that was his lifestyle for a long time.
that's right.
If you read his book, he talks about, going into these cities, and the first thing he would do was go find that bathroom, go find that spot, where he could be the leather rebel. And I think he was talking about it here years
Yeah,
before we found out what his lifestyle actually entailed. So he makes no qualms about it now, and good for him.
Yeah,
But he painted a picture for us with this song, I think.
wicked. And Bill?
Yeah, and so I just Googling while you guys were talking. So I guess he officially made his announcement was in 1998.
right.
So yeah, I assume this is right on Wikipedia, but apparently he gave a speech and said it during on MTV in 1998. Um, but yeah, so in terms of the track, yeah, I think it's great. Like it kind of aspects of the song remind me of like classic Priest. I think it shares some similarities with All Guns Blazing, just like a great like Judas Priest anthem. This one, like they dial up. There's some heaviness to the track, particularly in the drums and the guitar riffs, and they're good at dialing that up and down throughout the song, like a great, like super catchy chorus. So again, like just from a songwriting perspective, they know how to write a song that'll stick with you. So yeah, I think it's a great one. I don't think it's as good as the first three.
Mhm.
It's still a great song.
Awesome, awesome. No, I like it too. It's a cool song. We're gonna head into track number 5, Metal Meltdown. This is one of my favorites on the album. That killer guitar dual intro is just so Judas Priest. I mean, and I love the kind of the chorus line. For Metal Meltdown, here comes the Metal Meltdown. Run for your lives. It's pretty cool. We'll head up with Jason. What do you think of this classic?
I think it's my second favorite. Painkiller being the first. I think it's probably the second heaviest song on the album. Again, Painkiller being the heaviest. Um, but yeah, it's a total relentless, uncompromising song from start to finish. Lots of incredible solos. The tempo rivals Painkiller, as I mentioned. And it's a good anthem, a great anthem for just being a metalhead. And I'm not sure what the title means. Are we metalheads all melting down? I don't know. I don't
Well,
get
I
the
can tell you I can tell you what it means.
yeah? Okay, why don't you tell us, Ken?
Go ahead.
So basically, what he's referring to is this emblematic kind of idea that human tendency to push boundaries until they break. That's what he's referring to. So
Mm,
it's sort of referring to themselves or maybe him, um, which is what I get out of the song. So I think that's what he's trying to say with it.
Wicked. Cool. Bill, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I like it too. Like, agree with Jason is probably the second heaviest track. I think Rob shows some great range in here. He's got some great highs, like, just past the 2 minute mark. He's shouting like out of control, and he's like as high as he gets in that sentence. But right after that, he immediately shifts to like a deeper vocal delivery. So you get like all aspects of Rob on the track. So yeah, I think that's great. It's a heavy track, some great riffs in here. Uh, yeah, then he has an amazing scream at like just past the 4 minute mark when he's kind of screaming, and then you hear metal meltdown, like it's just great. Like I really enjoy it. Yeah, and it adds to the further diversity of the songs, right? Because it gets a bit heavier here versus the previous. So yeah, great one.
Ken, do you have
You guys,
anything else you want to add?
sorry.
Do you have anything else you want to add to this song?
I was just gonna. One thing I did want to say was, do you guys get the Sabbath vibe? Because
Yeah.
there's a huge like Black Sabbath vibe in here. That's what I picked out, which just with that really heavy rhythm and the riff. I swear I get Sabbath when I'm hearing it.
I
It's funny.
definitely get that.
Yeah, I
I'm
wrote
playing
in
it in
my
my head.
notes, Candlemass vibe. Sorry to jump
Oh
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
Candlemass. Okay.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Yeah. Okay.
No, wicked. I mean, it's a classic for sure. So we're heading into song number 6,
Yeah, the
Nightcrawler.
best song.
You like this one?
God, yeah.
Okay, well, you take it away then.
It's my second favorite song on the album because it's got this horror film sort of soundtrack vibe at the start, and then
I knew he was going to go there.
Yeah.
yeah, it does. I mean, the lyrics say that because it's talking about a creature that comes from hell. It's called the Nightcrawler, and basically stalks victims on a stormy night. I mean, that's basic premise for any kind of 80s horror film. So
Yeah.
like it's such a great song for me. I just love the fact that you get the creepy kind of anthem at the start. And then it's also kind of for me like the song itself is like a hybrid of power and thrash. I get a lot of that in this song. So that's why I always kind of think Painkiller then Nightcrawler, both for me, both songs. But I think this is a fantastic song.
Do you like the spoken word in it as well? It's pretty cool.
I do, because
Yeah.
it just brings out this kind of haunting nuance, and it adds to the whole idea of the Nightcrawler and this creature that's hunting down humans. I think it's a fantastic song.
Billy, I was going to go to you first, but I kind of gave it to Ken, so you take her away.
Well, Ken's punchline is my punchline. So my second favorite track. I love
Yeah.
it. Not because of horror references, though, but I just think it's a great song. And for me, it's just like I love Rob's vocals here. Like I don't even know how to do it justice. Like it's not that he's screaming or doing any of these killer screams, but it's the vocal melodies. Like even just the way he says Nightcrawler, it's so addictive. Like I love this song. The whole thing has like a great groove to it. I just think it's a brilliantly written song, and I mean I can maybe see why some people may want something faster, but for me it just clicks. It's a great spot, and usually I'm not a big fan of like spoken words, but I think it kind of works here, right? Like you kind of get these great riffs that flow into the spoken word. And then right as the spoken word's going, you've got Travis like speeding up the drums. And it's building louder and louder. And then the track just speeds up. Like it's just great. And yeah, Rob's fantastic on this song.
Awesome. And Jason, what do you think of the Crawler of the Night here?
My third favorite song. So
Nice.
yeah.
Cool.
Definitely a creepy, haunting atmosphere. You know what it reminds me? It stands out from the rest of the tracks for sure. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it's separate,
Yeah.
it's separate from everything else in this kind of theatrical, creepy, haunting way. And in the same way that Mary Jane stood out for Megadeth,
Ah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
which had that kind of creepy, haunting atmosphere. And, you know, on that song, Mary Jane, Mustaine kind of experimented with his vocals, gave it a bit of a dramatic touch. And I think Halford does the same thing here, you know, where he adds an eerie kind of vibe and plays around with his melodies a little more than he typically would or would on this album. So, it's, I guess, one of the more straightforward tracks on the album, but I think that's where it wins. It gives kind of it's a separate beast on its own, and yeah, I love it for that reason. Yeah.
And Bill, you said you saw KK's does this, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And a really good job of it. Yeah.
I thought he did well. It's funny, like a lot of the reviews I read and press, like I read, a lot of people, thought he shouldn't have sang that. That KK shouldn't have covered the album. Like for some reason, I guess they thought like they should stick with the classic pre-songs and then have Ripper sing some more tracks that he was on.
Mm-hmm.
The Priest albums, but I thought it was fantastic. Like I was shocked to hear like at least 3 or 4 reviews I read knocked them for playing this song, but I thought that was just silly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, since we're with you right now, Between the Hammer and the Anvil, track 7, Billy, take her away.
Yeah, I think I think this is great. I mean, I think this should have ended the album. I mean, put this last. I think would have been a better mix.
I agree.
That's for me, but this is just a great like fist pumping like anthem. It's just really great. Like another, you get some like really cool grooves and tempo transitions. You go on a journey from mid pace to fast paced sections, and Rob does some really great stuff here, right? Like at 4:01. He actually he does the Between the Hammer and the Anvil shout. And again, it's one of his best screams in the entire album. Like when I think back of many of my Priest favorite songs, it often involves like one line where like Rob just does something superhuman from a vocal perspective. And this song, he does it kind of once or twice. And again, like some great guitar playing on the solo section here. So yeah, another great track. I really like it. But sadly, this I think is the last great track on the album.
Oh,
Ooh, wow.
Yes.
That's bold.
Jason, what do you think of Between the Hammer and the Anvil? You can't get much more metal than being between the hammer and the anvil.
That's a tough place to be. Yeah, I think I agree with Billy that it's the last really killer song on the album. It's good that we're close to the end of the album here for that reason. I think Scott Travis does an incredible job here again, like he did in Painkiller. I think he really stands out on this song, shows kind of the technical powerhouse that he is, what he could bring to Priest. And he does it in spades in this song. Like the previous song, it's got a bit of a darker tone to it, I think. But as the song progresses, I think there's a lot of additional little harmonies between KK and Glenn that are really cool. Yeah, I think it's a solid track on an already awesome album thus far.
Wicked. And Ken.
Yeah, I agree. This is a very it's a good song. You get that slower kind of the doomy chords at the start, but it is dark for the most part. And the anvil and the hammer is actually a metaphor for good and evil. So that's essentially what I think lyrically they're trying to sort of get across to people. But besides the metaphor, I think the riffing is great. Rob has a fantastic scream. This is a really good song. I think technically, yeah, this probably is the last good song, although I don't mind Touch of Evil, but we'll get to that.
Cool. Yeah, we head into track number 8 here. Just a quick note, A Touch of Evil, one of my favorites. I like the back end of the album, but I agree with something Billy said, where I would take that song of Nightcrawler. Was it Nightcrawler, Billy? You said you'd want it to be the last one.
Hammer and Anvil probably would.
I agree with that, and I would have moved probably 9 and 10 as a grouping to the first, and maybe put Painkiller as third, only because Painkiller. I mean, you've gripped everybody right from the start. But anyways, we'll get into that. Touch of Evil, really cool. You got some keyboards from Don Airy, Deep Purple on this track. We'll head off with our guest Jason. You definitely have a touch of evil. What do you think of this?
Touch of evil.
Yeah, I mean those keyboards. I didn't know it was Don Airy
Yeah.
who played them. So obviously that stands out front and center. I don't know how often Priest has used keyboards up to this point, if ever. But yeah, the synths do like add a really kind of cool mood to the song that's much different from anything else on the album. The song is, I guess it just it's it's impressive that it's not my favorite song, but it's impressive that they keep kind of experimenting with their sound
Mhm.
even on such a heavy album. Like
Point.
we talked about it, this is technically a thrash album, but they're not afraid to go into areas that they might not have gone before, and they did that here. And kudos to them for doing it. I don't know if it hits on every on if it hits perfectly, but yeah, I'm just glad that they experimented a bit and are trying different things. And Rob sounds really fucking awesome in this song. There's
Mm.
some points of the song where his voice actually sounds really he comes across as tormented or anguished or in a way that I've never heard him do before. And it's really kind of cool that he can have these sort of inflections that you don't expect from him, and he does that in this song. So, yeah, interesting song, if not alone for the slight experimentation.
Ken, I take it you like it.
Yeah, I do like the song, and I'm going to touch upon an earlier song about his sexuality because this he has stated that this song, metaphorically speaking, is about love-related themes. So, like the whole song touches upon forbidden desires and inner conflict. That's the point, and the point of reference is like the a dark seductive force takes over this protagonist in the song. So I kind of feel like, again, this is going back to something that maybe Rob is dealing with, like dealing with his sexuality and sort of kind of metaphorically trying to fit it into a song like this. So I like it because it's daring in that regards. Now, of course, you can read into any lyric. So what I'm saying could be pure bullshit, but that's
Mm.
what I've read. And even for me, listening to the lyrics, that's what I feel is going on here. So I like the song for that reason. I don't think it's like a super fantastic song, but I like it because it's daring. It's a little bit different, and you get the keys by Bob Airy, and I like it for that reason. So it's a bit of a ballad with a catchy chorus. So kudos for them to do for putting a song like this on the album.
And Billy, a touch of evil for you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this. It's hands down my least favorite song on the album. Like, I actually just think it totally kills the momentum. I definitely think this track hasn't aged well, but you can't knock them for that. They did this in 1990.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I don't like it. It's just the whole pacing of the song. I'm not a big fan of. Like, I mean, even the guitar leads are very melodic. I mean, the whole song is, I think Ken said it's almost ballad like.
Yeah.
But to me, it feels like a leftover track from the previous two albums. Maybe Turbo with the synths, and yeah, it doesn't work. But I do agree with Jason. Like, I did, note, like, at the 4 minute mark, Rob does some incredibly like emotional vocals. That's kind of unlike stuff that he's done elsewhere on the album or within this whole like decade of his singing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But again, I just find it's just too out of place, a bit too generic, and it feels like leftovers from the previous two albums.
Cool. Yeah. No, I can understand that. Yeah. So we're heading into track number 9, which is an instrumental at 56 seconds. So it kind of, even though it's a separate song, kind of like the Hellion and Electric Eye, this kind of leads right into number 10 as well. So, Billy, since you went last, you go first. What do you think of Battle Hymn? And if you want, you could go into One Shot of Glory if you want to piece them together, however you guys want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I never really felt them together. I guess I could see you doing it. That to your point, when you raise that now, I could see that. I guess. Like, I mean, for me, like, yeah, like I can only see this work as like an intro or outro. I mean, it's 56 seconds. It does like virtually nothing for me. Like, it doesn't do anything. I mean, they're not going to achieve anything in 56 seconds. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's irrelevant for me.
Okay. And what about One Shot at Glory? Do you find you don't see a tie-in at all?
Yeah, I mean, I get maybe I'm a bit like jaded because I'm not a big fan of One Shot at Glory either.
Okay.
Again, I think it's much better than the previous one we just talked about. Like better than A Touch of Evil for sure. But like I just think it's a bit long, right? At almost 7 minutes,
Yeah.
it's longer than it has to be. It kind of overstays its welcome for me. And again, it feels it's a little more hard rock at times, less metal track. I mean, again, that's not a bad thing, but I just the excitement of like the first 7 or 8 tracks, and then for me, it all kinds of slows down a bit more. And so yeah, I guess because I'm not a big fan of One Shot of Glory, I guess I don't look too keenly on the intro to it.
Oh, okay. Ken, your thoughts? I don't know if you want to tie them both in together or what.
Yeah, like I agree with Billy. Battle Hymn
Mhm.
doesn't do anything for me either.
Okay.
It's just 56 seconds, and I'm not even sure why it's there, to be honest. I don't think it even needs to be on the album. But if you want to go into One Shot at Glory, it's very formulaic.
Mhm.
It's way long. It's formulaic in the sense that I think they're a slave to the lyrics. So they're kind of going back to this. This album is all about like lyrical kind of metaphors. So they want to talk about the idea of war and patriotism. And it's all right. Like the idea of soldiers striving for victory, amidst the chaos of war, very formulaic. It's like, okay, I think we kind of get the point. I mean, the chorus is kind of catchy and the solo is okay, but as an ending song, no, no, no. This song doesn't do it for me either. It opens great and then kind of ends on a bit of a dud.
Okay. Jason, your thoughts on the both songs? I've got a kind of a thought, but I want to hear what you have to think of Battle Hymn and One Shot of Glory. Do you think they kind of go together, or what's your perspective?
Well, I think Battle Hymn was filler for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, maybe they needed to have that extra track. Maybe there was some stipulation on how many tracks needed to be there. I agree with Ken that I don't think it needs to be there at all. It serves no purpose. I mean, there is a bit of build up to One Shot at Glory in that the sense that they're both kind of anthemic in sort of a battle or war way. But yeah, Battle Hymn, kind of a throwaway track. I don't know. One Shot of Glory, I agree with Billy, where it just doesn't fit the rest of the album. It feels more rock oriented. It feels like something we would have heard from Priest, 20 years before or even 10 years before. It just doesn't serve this album very well at all, and kind of takes the steam out of a super high octane album. To say some good things about it, I think it it's I think it's a good album, a good song to I don't know if you just feel like pounding your fist in the air and feeling triumphant, and you got your buddies with you, and I don't know, it could maybe serve that purpose, maybe as a D&D theme song or something like that, but I don't know. It's yeah, man, I could have done without. Yeah.
Cool. For me, I think this album is amazing. I mean, I don't like how the album ends either. I find it almost like it deflates. And I think Battle Hymn is cool. It reminds me it's not as memorable as the Hellion by far. But what I like about it is I find where it's kind of slow and quiet, and then boom, it just hits into One Shot of Glory. It reminds me of kind of that lead up to Electric Eye. I mean, One Shot of Glory is nowhere near as bombastic or as as legendary as Electric Eye, but I think this should have been 9 and 10 should have been 1 and 2, and then maybe Painkiller 3. In the sense, me being the consummate retailing marketer, you never want to put your goods up front. You always want, I mean, there's two lines of thought. You want people to walk through a little bit before you get to the meat and potatoes of what you're doing here. And I just feel that would have been better placement for me, and end off, as Billy said, the album with Between the Hammer and the Anvil. I thought that, and I was like, I'm not comparing them to the Hellion and the Electric Eye, in the sense that those are two of probably the biggest pairings of songs in song history, especially for Priest. But I think it just would have made more sense. I feel this little 50 some odd second or second last track is kind of like, okay, you're kind of puzzled by it, but I think it fits One Shot at Glory because it kind of serves it up a little bit. And I always thought, the Hellion did that for Electric Eye so well. I always thought that was sort of what they were maybe going for here, but kind of didn't really pull it off, especially at the end of the album. So
yeah, I wish, on that note, I wish they had, I mean, the album starts so strong. I wish it was bookended with one incredible song and one song, because I think those, first and last song really leaves lasting impressions on people.
Good point.
And they were, look at the songs, the first 3 or 4 songs.
Yeah,
they could have written a song to close this album in epic fashion. It's not like they didn't have the talent to do it. We've seen in Painkiller, obviously they had the chops to do that, and it's unfortunate that they couldn't do that. But.
And the overall album, I think the original album was 45-52, so it wasn't massively long to begin with. And again, to your guys' point, you're wandering around in that last song for almost 7 minutes.
Yeah.
That's more of a, I'm thinking better placement or even better pick or something like that would have been more favorable. But anyways, regardless, what the hell do I know?
Yeah. Maybe if they had skimmed it down by 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Just pulled the ideas together a little bit more. Yeah. Again, maybe they were just stretching it out. Again, like maybe that's why, the song before is in there. Just
right. Well, guys, that's the album in a nutshell. Definitely a great chat and a great deep dive into the songs. And for anybody out there that's not familiar with this album, you definitely have to check it out. I mean, it is, like I say, the song Painkiller should be given out with your metal membership card at the time of when you join the movement. So,
yeah. And one thing I wanted to say is, like, whoever thought they would have released like an album like this?
Yeah.
Like, if you're to go back to the early 70s and just project yourself into 1990, you would have never imagined that they would have done anything this heavy. And it's a testament to their, I don't know, to their legacy that they were able to pull this off, and at such a critical time. I think without this album, I don't know if Priest would be what they are today.
That's a good point.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
No, that is true.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Jason. But what shocks me is that then it ends after that album.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it just re-kicked their career into high gear, and then you end it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get that. Like,
it was like a rebirth, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Rob has stated that he was fighting with the band even when they were recording this album, that he wanted to sort of try different things. So
but to that point, this is different.
Yeah, but I think he wanted to do a lot of different things that the band maybe just didn't want to do.
Like completely left field, you're saying.
Yeah. Right. Because it's easy to, just look at it. Like, he does Fight, which is like thrash groove. He does two.
Yeah.
Like, you can see that the progression for him was, I wanted to do different things.
Right.
So I think a lot of it really falls on Rob's shoulders and not so much the band. But I would agree that his leaving the band killed the total momentum. Totally. Yeah. And it's a shame, because who knows where they could have went. Could they do part 2 of, say, Painkiller, or what they would have did? But we'll never know.
We'll never know.
Well, Rob left in May of '92, and it was stated that he waited till the end of this tour
Yeah.
And essentially he was contractually, he wasn't able to sell or release Fight until he actually physically ended things with Priest. So within his contract with Judas Priest. So I think Billy hit it on, or I think Ken hit it on the head there, that he may have wanted to try, and then there was a lot of tensions in the band,
Yeah.
and
That's what I read. That's
yeah.
what I read.
Billy, what's your thoughts overall on Priest up to this point?
And I mean, with respect to what you guys were saying, like that's what I read, right? That
Yeah.
that Rob wanted to actually not just try new things, he wanted to do solo albums and go do some different stuff. And I remember it being something to do with contractual and the band, like it just couldn't happen while he was in Priest. So he said, "Okay, I'm not in Priest," and he went and did that. Because from what I remember, he said he would have done both. Right,
Right.
he stayed in Priest and he would have did his other stuff to the side, but the contracts and the band didn't want him to do that, so he left.
Sounds kind of like a Newsted and Metallica situation, even though Rob wasn't like a newer member like Newsted at the time. I mean, geez, but kind of weird like that, where they wouldn't let him do, his side projects, and it was Metallica or nothing. So who knows? Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyways, great discussion, fellas. We're leading into our top 10, an interesting top 10 this week. And we're going to let our guests go first, but our top 10 is bands that had albums or bands that have changed their direction in any way, shape, or form from where they were to where they maybe ended up, or they went in and out of a change or anything like that. So kind of an interesting topic for sure. So they either changed genre totally, they changed within the genre of metal, they brought something out, good or bad. It may be something you like, something you don't like, or whatever, but we're going to break it down. I don't necessarily think it's necessarily a top 10. It's more of just a 10 for me, But Jason, you're our guest. You take it away.
All right, so we can go with the obvious here. I have a couple of obvious ones. My first obvious one is Pantera.
That was my number one.
Yeah. Obviously glam to groove thrash. I don't know if you guys are fans of, the glam Pantera.
I'm a fan of the glam.
I
I
like
love
it.
that era.
Yeah.
I like it.
I didn't know Pantera prior to the glam, or prior to the groove, so I'm sure like most fans, they found out after the fact that this is where the band actually came from, and then I went and explored those albums, and yeah, I have to say it's half decent glam with a touch of thrash. Like you can hear the natural progression. It's not like they just went, okay, glam's not popular anymore, we're going to be a thrash band. You can hear the elements that would eventually become Cowboys from Hell in the glam albums, and they're there, and they're not so bad. Um, and on that note, we're gonna go to Celtic Frost as the second one. So they start as a first wave black metal band, a proto black metal band. Then they go to glam, much like Pantera started. Then they go to thrash. Then they go to industrial. They had quite the many faces. My favorite phase of them, and you guys probably, I think I probably have one person on board, um,
Yeah.
is their glam phase. I
Wow.
absolutely adore Cold Lake, and I think it's a genius
Same here.
album. I cannot find that album on vinyl. I've been across this world. I go into record stores in Europe and Scandinavia, and I get laughed out of the record stores when I ask for it.
You won't find it.
Um,
You won't find
no,
it.
no. Unfortunately, I did have it on vinyl when it originally came out, um, but but I don't
See,
have it anymore.
I had the original CD when it came out. I bought it, and then it took a long time to track down that CD. It took me forever. And if you find it now on eBay, it's going for insane prices.
Okay, so maybe I'm confused. Maybe there was never a vinyl release, and I thought I had originally got.
Um,
I
Don't.
could have
I don't know,
sworn.
Jason. There might be, but I
Okay,
wasn't really. I'm not really a vinyl collector. I collect
right.
CDs, so I know that when it came out, there was a CD and cassette release. I have both,
Yeah. Okay.
and but that CD release was freaking hard to find,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
it still is to this day because it's
Well, we know
obviously it's out of
Tom.
print,
Tom.
right?
Yeah, and Tom
Yeah.
doesn't even acknowledge the album anymore,
No,
right?
he hates
So,
it. Yeah,
which is unfortunate because I think it serves a purpose. As much
yeah,
as a lot of fans don't like it, it's not that different from the albums, from some of the albums prior
yeah.
and after. I mean, they always had it touched with a little bit of glam, but they just went full throttle with this album. So, all right. So my third band is Carcass,
Mm.
who started as you know, a grindcore gore grind band, then went completely left field into a melodic death metal band, not unlike Arch Enemy, um, which kind of makes sense because Mike Amott, who was in Carcass, would eventually go on to find Arch Enemy, to form Arch Enemy. So I like both eras of Carcass. I think I prefer the melodic death metal Carcass. Heartwork is an incredible album
Yeah.
uh, of the Swedish death metal variety. So yeah, I enjoy both those eras. My fourth is Typo Negative.
Hmm.
They went from a total crossover thrash band to a gothic romantic doom metal band, doomy metal band. Probably not for the better, in my opinion. I prefer the crossover stuff they were doing prior to that. Again, you have the carnivore stuff, obviously, which is, similar to the early Typo Negative stuff. But I was never a big fan of Pete Steele gothic phase. Eh, you know, I had girlfriends who loved him and swooned over him, and swooned over those albums, but I always thought they were a bit girly and not my cup of tea. And then my fifth would be Amorphous. They went from a straight up death metal band to a progressive metal rock band. Um, I prefer the earlier Opeth stuff like Tales from the Thousand Lakes, the first album, which I can't recall the name of right now. But yeah. And then on a similar note, my sixth one would be Opeth, you
Hmm.
know, from death metal to progressive rock. And as Kim said when I mentioned this, slash bullshit. Um, and I agree with that. I cannot stand later era Opeth. Not that I don't like progressive rock, because I do. I love Yes, I love, Tangerine Dream. I love bands of that nature.
Sega.
But I always felt like Opeth kind of forced it. It never really felt right. Whenever they try to be too progressive, it feels that something's a little off for me. And maybe that's because I adore their death metal stuff so much and just can't get on board with it. I'm not sure.
I agree
Uh,
100%.
Yeah.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Um, and then my seventh would be Dark Throne.
Oh,
Um,
yeah,
so they are considered to be the original second wave Norwegian black metal band that kick-started that second wave of black metal off, and they did. But prior to that, they were a death metal band, and they were sort of a technical death metal band. And then they went from one album, which was technical death metal, to a lo-fi uh, black metal band, and it was probably the biggest shift in music that I've ever heard from a band. Um, if you guys want to, if you're not a Dark Throne fan, their black metal stuff, I recommend seeking out their first album, which is a straight up technical death metal band.
yeah. I have that
Uh,
album.
yeah, it's a good album. It's a good album.
Yes.
And then number eight would be Sepultura.
Yeah.
Mm,
Uh,
Good point.
They went from, again, a proto black metal band, I think, with Morbid Visions and Bestial Devastation. There's a lot of proto black metal on those albums, which would eventually become black metal. Then they went to a thrash band. Then they went to a groove band, quasi nu metal band. Um, so probably one of the biggest shifts in musical direction happened within that band. And you know, they were successful with some of it, and in my opinion, unsuccessful with a lot of it. But I think they were perfect at Beneath the Remains, and I wish they would have stayed right there in that pocket.
Yeah, me too.
Unfortunately, they didn't. I mean, Arise is a good album, but Beneath the Remains to me is the pinnacle of their career. And then a couple here that I didn't think of that Kim threw out at me. Um, number 9 would be Cataclysm.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They went from an extreme technical death metal band, incredible technical death metal band in the early 90s to mid 90s. Albums like Sorcery and Mystical Gate of Reincarnation, you know, these albums that were on Nuclear Blast, incredible, incredible death metal albums, much in the same vein as Cryptopsy at the time, but even a little more, not quite as technical, a little more experimental. If you guys haven't heard Sorcery or Mystical Gate of Reincarnation by Cataclysm, I recommend seeking those albums out because they're incredible albums. They tagged themselves back in the 90s as Northern Hyperblast. They had their own kind of tag for their music, and it's absolutely Northern Hyperblast. If you go back and listen to it, just remember that term, and you'll be like, "Yep, that makes sense." And then they went to a groove-oriented melodic death metal band, which I can't fucking stand. And it's unfortunate. A lot of people love, you know, Cataclysm fronted by Maurizio. I prefer their original singer, Stefan. He was insane. He was a mystical, magical death metal madman. And then you just have this kind of dialed in after he left or was kicked out of the band. Maurizio took over on vocals. And I think they just lost whatever made them so strong and incredible and magical that they had early on. And I know a lot of people love him. There's a couple of albums I like with Maurizio that he fronted. Shadows and Dust is a good one. A couple of the later ones. But, you know, I just think they're now riding a wave of just kind of mediocre melodic death metal. And that's my list.
Cool.
Great. We had a
Can I?
couple there.
Yeah. Can I go next, Jim?
Absolutely. You've got it.
Awesome. Okay. So here's a band that I'm sure you'll all agree, In Flames, one of the uh, one of the greatest kind of like metal death bands ever. You basically you get Colony, you get Horacle, you get Just Erase, all incredible albums. But the album where they kind of started their change was Clayman in 2000, which I do actually like. Um, and it's still a decent album. Like it's kind of more, they kind of embrace a lot more melody. They sort of push back the death metal elements, streamlined metallic sound for sure. And it led into the crappy shit from the last 3 or 4 albums that are just god awful. But and their style has totally changed. They're not even a death metal band
They
anymore,
kind
which
of
is
went new metally in a way, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
somewhat new metally. I mean,
Like
the
even
last album
visually,
was
like the album covers, they changed their
yep,
logo
yep,
to look
yep,
like corn. It was
yep,
weird.
yep.
Yeah.
The last album was kind of a bit of
Yeah.
a return to
I
form.
like their
With
last album. Yeah.
yeah, I like the last album too. I thought with what's his name on guitar, his name escaping me at the moment, but it's good. I think it was decent, but yeah, that's I think it's blasphemy for most fans. Next on my list is Meshuggah. Destroy, Erase, Improve was the change. I
Good
mean, I
one.
like the first album, Contradictions Collapse. I mean, it's sort of groove metal in the vein of Metallica, obviously, but then they come out with this like tech heavy, like quasi industrial sound or progressive sound, actually. So yeah, that's a change, and they've actually been on that trajectory for pretty much every album since. And I know you mentioned this, Jason, Carcass and Heartwork. I mean, that album is Necroticism is such a great album, and then all of a sudden you get Heartwork. I mean, that's what a
It
change.
it was a change. Not that Heartwork was a terrible album. Would you agree?
No, no,
No.
no, I love Heartwork.
I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the
But
album.
yeah,
I'm just
the
saying,
necroticism is a different beast altogether, right?
oh, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like you get
Yeah.
Necroticism, which is just in your face, and
Yeah.
then you get Heartwork, which is like, what? What just happened here?
Yeah.
Like
I
what?
do think it was Micah Mott because if you listen to Arch Enemy now, Heartwork sounds like that, right?
Yeah,
Like it
you're
just,
right. You're
yeah.
right. And even current Carcasses, I like it.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's more. I don't know what to say about it. It's not like in your face. it's still
And
pretty
then they had
decent.
that Swan Song, which was like a rock
Right,
album, right?
right, which is totally different sound. So
Yeah.
they pretty much, gave up, keep gave in their death metal badge and became something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much funny. Next on my list is contentious because I liked the previous album, COC, when they went to Deliverance.
Oh
Mm,
man.
that's
I
Oh,
love
man.
Blind. Blind is a brilliant album. It's absolutely one of my favorite albums from 1991. And they went to they changed the crossover thrash to kind of sludge metal. Pepper Keenan took over from the vocals. They got rid of Carl Agel, which is kind of a shame because I really really like that. I really like that album. Deliverance was okay.
I love Deliverance.
Yeah, I know, Jim. You were saying you love
Yeah,
Deliverance.
huge fan.
I mean, they had the single Albatross, which was the first ever single to chart for them. So I understand why they did it. I mean, in a way, like Metallica, they wanted to be, I guess, a much more accepted band overall, and that album was pretty much the start of it.
See, I don't understand it though, because why sludge? Like
Mm.
crossover to sludge? I don't even get it.
Crossover to rock, at least.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like it makes no sense. Like,
Yeah, I could see that. I still think Blind is a masterpiece.
oh,
I
I
love that
agree.
album.
Yeah.
Every song is killer. Like I just love, and I love the vocalist Carla Joe from Canada.
Yeah.
I think he was from Montreal.
Really? I
He's a
didn't know that.
fantastic. Yeah. He was from Montreal, as far as I
Wow.
know.
Huh.
He's an incredible vocalist. I loved him. He had such a great range. He could scream. He could clean sing. It was fantastic. But
Cool.
again, it is what it is, right?
Yep.
Next on the list, I have Avenged Sevenfold when they went with City of Evil in 2005. I actually like them. I like the earlier style when they were more kind of like a metalcore, lots of screaming with them shadows. But then they go on a major label. They put out City of Evil, which is like a cross between Metallica, Guns N' Roses. It's more like bombastic kind of rock style. Shadows changed his vocal style from screaming to singing, but obviously there was a reason for it because he apparently was like fucked up his vocal cords to the point where if he continued to screaming, he would have probably lost his voice. So I think it's a cool album. It's got some memorable songs for me, but I've always liked them. Their direction is weird. They've gone on a very weird trajectory as well after City of Evil, but I appreciate them for what they are. And then at number 5, I have Metallica's Black Album. I mean, I'm not going to say much about it, but it's got to be on the list. You cannot not put it on the list because it's such a huge impact and change in metal from, like Justice to Black. But I think it needs to be stated. And then I put Judas Priest and Painkiller because again, it's another one of those kind of you get Ram It Down, but I love Ram It Down. I thought Ram It Down was a really good album, but then you get Painkiller. So I know we've talked about it, but it needs to be on the list. I know Jason, you mentioned it. Of course, you stole my thunder, but yeah, Celtic Frost, Into the Pandemonium to Cold Lake. I don't really think it's that much of a change. I think the changes were already happening when Into the Pandemonium came out. So it's just a natural progression to go into glam rock. But I love this album. I've always loved it. I'll defend it till I die. I don't care what
And I hate
anyone
when
says.
people call it straight up glam because it's not. It has
No,
that
it's not.
dark edge to
I
it
made that
still.
mistake online calling it glam, and I got ripped apart. But
I think
It's still
great.
dark as fuck, and it's just
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
you know what it is for me? It's it's a harder it's a Dawkins album or an LA Guns album. That's how I felt about it.
And guys, just to close the loop on that one, Jason, on the vinyl pressing, I looked it up quick. So they actually did a German pressing and surprisingly a US pressing.
Really?
Not a single copy available for sale in North America.
Wow.
There's currently 50 copies available for sale throughout Europe, and you can have one delivered to your door for just under €100. Not too great.
Whoa. Yeah, that's not too bad, actually.
That includes $25 of shipping.
I would pay that.
It's not bad. There's a load of them out there for sale.
Interesting.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's cool. I'm glad you looked it up, Billy. Cool. Okay, and number 2, I'm putting Shadows Fall because they made a huge change when Threads of Life came out in 2007, where they went more more thrash with some metalcore into the sound. It's mostly clean singing, but I absolutely love this band. They're one of my favorite all time bands. I mean, they basically started out as like melodic death metal, and then eventually over time they changed.
Is this the
Um,
guy with the dreads down to his feet?
yes, Brian
Okay.
Kerr.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's a fantastic singer. I love his vocal range. The guy can sing clean. He can sing death. He's fantastic. Oh, one of my favorite bands. But I think Threads of Life is a huge change in their style. But you know, it's carried on by both Matt Batchend and Jonathan Dene, who are two brilliant guitarists. Fantastic! What a great one-two punch. But
And are they still kicking? Are they around?
well, they're kind of everything. The project's been put on hold because of the fact that Jonathan's in Anthrax and Matt's
Oh, yeah.
in a couple of they're all kind of doing other things, making money because I don't think the band made a lot of money.
Right.
But from my understanding is they are convening to do some reunion shows, and I've heard that possibly there is another album in the works.
Okay.
So, but we'll see where they go. I mean, their last couple albums are kind of thrash, you know, with a just a touch of metalcore. But I think Threads of Life is a great album. And this is the album that I when thinking about this list, this album came up for me while the band, because I know it's a huge change, but I absolutely love this band. When Nurgle sort of put Behemoth on hold, he put out Me and That Man, which in my mind is one of the greatest changes ever. I mean, it's like dark folk music. It's like there's a lot of blues, there's a lot of Americana. It's really dark stuff. You get like a bit of Johnny Cash, you get a bit of John Cougar Mellencamp. I love it. It's got dark roots to it. It's just so fantastic. 4 albums that he's put into this project. Like on the last album, he's actually brought in like Gary Holt, Randy Blythe, Abbott, and even David Vincent as some of the guests on it, which is great. And it's just you're melding like kind of like blues, folk, and rock, and it's fantastic.
I was gonna say I prefer when he brings guest vocalists in.
Yes,
I love the band, but
yeah,
I don't think his voice is the strongest suit for that band.
no,
And I
no,
love when he
right,
brings in guests who can do
yeah.
the songs justice because the songs are awesome. Like
Yeah,
musically,
yeah,
they're awesome.
I could see that. He's not known to be like a sort of a folk singer. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is like a drastic change. But the reason why I brought this up because during the pandemic, I started writing a novel, which I'm still working on, called Battery, and this like the first couple albums they just spoke to me, so I had them as like inspiration when I was started writing my novel. So I love this album. I wish there was a lot more talk about it, but maybe people don't really like. I guess they don't really associate Nurgle and Behemoth, and then you get this. But
Right.
I think it's brilliant, totally
Good one.
brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Wicked. Some great picks. So we had maybe a couple of mine in there. Billy, take her away. I'll bring up the rear.
Yeah, okay. So I think I had more with Jason than I did with Ken, but I had one, I think one with Ken. So for me, again, not in any particular order. I'm going with what a recent podcast we did, Death Row, one of my all-time favorite albums, Deception Ignored. I think it's one of the biggest changes going from like traditional German thrash to one of the best technical thrash albums ever written with piano, the whole work. So love it. We did a whole podcast, so I'm not going to spend time there. Number 2, I have Napalm Death. One of my all-time favorite albums is Harmony Corruption.
Great.
So if you go back to the old days of Napalm Death, the grindcore sound, this was pretty different. I mean, this is very US death metal. I mean, they brought in Barney for this album, who had some great stuff with Benediction. They pulled in 2 US guitarists, and then they recorded it at Morrisound in Florida. So you got, you know, very much some Florida death metal influence. But yeah, I love that album.
I've heard Barney say that I don't think he appreciates that album anymore. I
No?
think I've read interviews where he was like, I think we changed too drastically, um, which is unfortunate
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think it's a great death metal album.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. It's my favorite of all their work, but Oh, well, that's interesting. Number three, Jason had this Pantera Cowboys from Hell. Yeah, I enjoyed the other stuff, and I think Jason raised this point, but some could argue it was actually the power metal album in '88 was the change. That was the album that Phil joined, and so you really got to hear some of the early Cowboy stuff. But I'll go with Cowboys from Hell. That's the most obvious one. Number four, I've got Death. So just this is not as drastic, but it's just a progression that I think is quite extraordinary. I mean, you go with like Scream and Legacy, Legacy. I mean Leprosy, just classic old school death metal, and then the bridge starts with Spiritual Healing. And you go from Human in '91 to Sound of Perseverance in '98. Like the musicianship just goes right off the charts, and it really gets quite progressive. Still, I mean, Chuck's still doing death metal growls and stuff, but there was a big change in sound there. My number five, you guys both hit on it. Carcass, Hard Work, so I'll skip that. Number six, Jason, you had this one, Sepultura. Like for me, my favorite album, hands down, Beneath the Remains. And then, they just started losing me going into groove and new metal. And, I didn't mind they brought in some Brazilian influences, but then there's industrial. Like it just changed quite a bit. Number seven, Morbid Angel. And so I'm going with the album. I screw the pronunciation up. Like, what is it? Like Illu Divinium Insanus or whatever it was called. That was like so industrial, drum machines. Yeah, I mean, I remember reading a great quote that it was Morbid Angel's Saint Anger. And so
True.
I thought that was kind of fair. Number eight, so going to power metal. I don't think we touched on power metal yet, but Halloween and the 1993 Chameleon album. I mean, this thing was like a pop album. Yeah, no Kai here. The band, like Kiske said in interviews, like the band just they were all running in different directions. It was a mess, like a disaster.
And Billy, I think they just remastered it.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think they just released like 5 albums, and I think that was one of them.
Oh wow.
Okay, yeah, it could be. It could be. Like yeah, I'm not a big fan.
No, me neither.
And then it all fell apart. I mean, we all know, like, Michael left to do like pop rock projects. So I think he was pushing the direction there. And then, of course, they come back with Andy Darris on vocals, and we get like a much grittier Halloween after that. Then I'm going Entombed and like Wolverine Blues.
Oh yeah, good one.
So yeah, I mean, big departure from Left Hand Path and Clandestine. I mean, a lot of people call this like death and roll as sort of a thing, but it entered like hard rock and some hardcore and punk, but it was a pretty big change, and it kind of shocked fans, a bit like Carcass, I guess.
Did you like that change, Billy?
I like
it. I like it.
Same with me. I liked it.
I love that album.
Love that album.
Yeah. I mean, people are so passionate, right? Some people just can't stand it, and others really like it. Like I fall into the like it camp, so I'm good with that. Then my number 10, I'm going a little bit different, but I guess it's somewhat metal or maybe not hard rock. So I'm going with Canada's very own Rush. So I love early Rush. I love kind of mid Rush, but for me, like starts in '82.
You don't like synth Rush?
Yeah, it kind of falls apart with Signals, and that kind of lasts till Presto or maybe Roll the Bones. It's just, I mean, basically you went, it became too keyboard and synth heavy, right? Like poor Alex had to step aside, and even Getty acknowledged that Alex took the brunt of a lot of that stuff in his book. So yeah, I think that's fair. It's my least favorite era of the band, but then the band goes back to like a great hard rock sound starting in '93 with Counterparts, and that continued till the unfortunate end. So
didn't they even experiment with hip hop and Roll the Bones? I'm pretty sure
it was just
there's a song.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a song on there that's kind of hip hop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's got a rap part.
Yeah, kind of rap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Who would have
Hold the
ever thought
Fire.
that though? Oh, Hold Your Fire,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that was just like
Oh, I
pure
like that
synth,
album.
like pop. Like that's
Saw
my
that
least
tour.
favorite Rush album.
I saw that tour for Hold Your Fire. Oh man.
That album art, I never understood it. I just see it in my head
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah, it's weird, right? The red one.
yeah.
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 Good list. Good list.
Oh,
Yeah. Very good list.
yeah, good list, Billy. Wow. Okay, I got some different stuff, but I have, I think, three that are definitely. Obviously, I had Celtic Frost, Cold Lake. I got to be honest. I had that on CD, and if I still had
And
it on,
you loved it.
I'd give it to you, Jason. I would mail it to you in a second. I think I either threw it out my car window on the way home,
No.
or I gave it away to a friend. I couldn't have it in my collection. But I would buy it now. I want it now to complete my Celtic Frost collection.
But do you actually like it now?
No, I can't.
Okay.
Cherry Orchards. I'm sorry. It's.
Oh, I love that song.
I got
Billy.
ripped apart on the Metal Voice. I got ripped apart. People were coming at me left, right, and center. Friends of mine, and they were saying, "Jimmy, you're calling it glam." I said, "It's." Anyways, I lit it up, and I said, "Why don't we ask the expert who wrote the album? You know, Tom G. Warrior, and what will he say?" And that's all I'm going to say.
But I did. Billy, do you like the album?
So I'm kind of in between you guys, right? Like musically, I don't mind it. Like I just don't find Tom's like vocals work that well for me. I find him a bit whiny at times on some of that. Like,
and he's a hideous glam metaler.
Oh yeah. I'll admit this. You know, Jason, I'll admit this. Okay, it's not a bad album. Just like Motley Crue's self-titled album is one of my favorite Motley Crue albums. I hate a lot of the Motley Crue albums, but I love Karabi as the lead singer. It just wasn't Motley Crue. They should have changed the friggin' name, you know? Like,
right. Okay.
I just didn't want Tom singing it.
I think Tom learned from that, and that's why we got these other projects from him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that goes into Sepultura, same points you guys made. I mean, we did a podcast on Beneath, and it's phenomenal. Although I do like Arise. I mean, but it just it just keeps changing and changing, and we've gone down that. Pantera, don't need to go into that. One of my favorite bands, one of my favorite albums, Cowboys. I have, Billy told me I should go in and try to get those original albums. I think they've been re-released, and I'm probably going to do that. I don't mind it. It's just weird for me to go backwards like that. But I mean, it started, Pantera, as far as I'm concerned, started at Cowboys, but I do want to go back and get those albums. I'm a completist, even with the stuff I am trying to seek out a Cold Lake CD, believe it or not. So they're having the last laugh at me. So, and I was pissed it's not in the box set, but I mean, I saw an interview with Tom and he will not put it in a box set. He said when he's dead, the record company will probably re-release it, but that's about it.
And Jim, just on the Pantera, they didn't reissue the earliest stuff. There's bootlegs available.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Because the band are the same as Tom.
They won't.
Tom, they refuse to acknowledge those old records.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So number 7's kind of a bit of a weaker one for me because I like it. I guess this is you like it or you don't like it, but I'm going to go with Slayer, Diabolus, and Musica.
Oh, shit.
I don't mind it, but it would be my weakest Slayer album, and I love Slayer, but this was just I try so hard online many times to defend it, and I'm even coming up short. But I do.
But is there a good album after Seasons? Come on.
No, there is. There is. There is. I mean, I still think they had one or two good albums left in them, but I can understand what you're saying for sure.
Yeah.
And number 6 is kind of a weird one. Mastodon. Crack the Sky kind of came out. It was a super popular album. I liked early sludgy. I like a lot of sludgy doom metal, stoner metal. I like that. Acid Bath's one of my favorite bands. So earlier Mastodon would have been more sludgy or doomy, but
for sure.
I think they made a really good choice for their career compared to somebody like Metallica with Crack the Sky. Sold like crazy, is a great album. I have to admit, I think Emperor of the Sand's probably one of my favorites from then on. I don't have their newest one in 2021, but kind of fallen off a little bit for me. But I mean, I love Crack the Sky. I think it's a wicked album.
Even Leviathan was a big change from what was previous,
Well,
right?
that was what? That was a concept album, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of just definitely started kind of changing. And I thought for their career, I mean, you know, you can't argue with that.
At one time, they were saying they were going to be as big as Metallica. Do you remember the hype
Yeah.
around them? Like there was a
Yeah.
ton of hype.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My number 5, kind of a weird one, but Sabbath, Black Sabbath. I mean, going from Ozzy to Dio, kind of going from, again, a bit of a sludgier doom metal, heavy metal band. They had that elements of that darker stuff to when you hit with Heaven and Hell. Kind of, I mean, you know, I think Dio can sing the Ozzy stuff. No problem at all. But I mean, Heaven and Hell was just kind of like a little bit of a light went on and changed it into a little bit of a more traditional heavy metal band, more so for me. And then it kind of went into Mob Rules that way. But I mean, I'm a huge Ozzy Sabbath. I couldn't tell you which one I like more. I mean, I like the original albums from Black Sabbath up until maybe Never Say Die, or Technical Ecstasy is not bad, but I am a huge Dio Sabbath fan as well. So I love them both fairly equally. So that's kind of an interesting one. I threw in Testament in there because, you know, you had them kind of go into a death metal phase with Demonic. And
Yeah.
I like that album. A lot of people don't. I think it's Murky Waters on that is a really good track. I like it. A lot of people, it would be in their last final Testament if they were to rate the Testament albums. But I kind of like it. I know they remastered it and they gave it some new kind of updated artwork and that a few years back. I kind of like it.
I wonder, does the band do anything live from that album? I just saw
I
them
don't
and
think they do.
No.
Okay. No.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I
no.
didn't.
Yeah. Number 3, I thought Billy might have had this, or I thought Demolition Hammer. You know, you go from Epidemic of Violence to Time Bomb, kind of a bit of like there's only 3 albums there. I don't know. I gotta ask Billy, do you like that third album?
No, I just never went there. I just lived with the first 2. So
okay.
In my mind, there's only 2.
Well, you can't even. It's hard. I want to get it to complete my 3, and I got to be honest. It's just it's not even for sale. You can't even get it anywhere. It's like I couldn't find it for good reason because it's not. It's. I tried to get into it, but it's just not. Man, it's just like it's like trying to be Pantera, but nowhere near as good. So,
no.
I mean, you go from that first and that second album. Anyways, number 2 for me is Bathory. You know, you're going from kind of early black metal, you know, I mean, Under the Sign of the Black Mark is an amazing album. And then in the 90s to switch it up to Viking metal, I accidentally bought one in the 90s. I can't even tell you it's in my collection. And it just was such a night and day change for me. Those first 3 albums were probably my favorite, the self-titled. The second and this Under the Black Mark, number 3 there. And then I have a Metallica as my number 1, but I didn't pick the Black Album. My heart got broken with the Black Album, and I agree with Ken 100%. But Load is what just beat the shit out of me after that. And I got to be honest, if they had released, I am all for them. And we've had this discussion a million times. You can release the Black Album, go buy your $1 million worth of stuff you want to buy, your gold toilet and your artwork, and I'm fine with that. Lars can do whatever he wants, but then come back with even a Death Magnetic or a Hardwired album. But they lost their, as far as I'm concerned, they lost their spark. That was Metallica. Load, then Reload. They just kept kind of after dud. I mean, I think there's maybe an album in Hardwired, and the other one there. What's the other one with the coffin on the cover?
Death Magnetic.
I think there's an album within those 2 albums. I find Metallica albums are super bloated after that. They need to cut down. Their latest album, I rated a 6 out of 10, and really I should be rating it a 4. It's too long. The songs are too long, and I think out of Hardwired, there's probably 4 or 5 good songs, and same with Death Magnetic to make an actual really good album, and that should have been released right after right after the commercial successful Black Album. And I don't hate the Black Album. It's a good album. It's just not a Metallica album. But Load, man, I just can't even get into that at all. I mean, you know,
I think
the
to be
King's
fair though,
logo.
but to be fair, like it is a sign of its time. Load and
Yes.
Reloaded,
Oh
like the
yeah.
mid '90s were a weird fucking time,
Yeah.
you know, and even bands like Exodus didn't escape it. Like look at Force of Habit. It's just
Destruction.
True. Yeah,
it's a
Destruction.
very true.
nightmare. So I don't know. Had the '90s not happened, had music not been so weird, heavy music in particular, would we have got those two albums? I don't know. I think they were
True.
just feeding off of all that weird shit in the mid '90s.
Well, Destruction, Creator, you name
Well,
them
yeah,
all.
okay. I'm talking about American
Oh,
bands. The
Oh yeah,
European
yeah.
bands were not impacted by that at all. You
They,
know, it
they,
just seemed to be kind of relegated to the US or to North
oh,
America.
just kills me. It's like let's go. You know, who was that? Sacred Reich, for instance.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they decided
yeah.
to change it up, even though I don't mind Heel, but it's like it's just like come on, guys. And that's a lot. A lot of metalheads have a lot of disdain for Pantera for bringing that kind of. They
That's a
kind of
good
kept.
point.
They
Yeah.
kept fanning the embers a little bit, but I thought the '90s were exceptionally well with. It drove a lot of the good thrash and a lot of the good death metal a little bit more underground. There was still a lot of good stuff being released. I don't know.
For mainstream metal though, I think that's what was
Oh,
impacted. And
absolutely.
I think you're right. I think Pantera definitely, I'm not going to say can be blamed for that, but I think everybody wanted to be like them.
Oh yeah, they
And
saw the instant success with what they
yeah,
were doing. You know,
yeah,
Vulgar was a huge selling album. You know,
yeah.
Cowboys. They just kept, you know, Far Beyond Driven. Bam, 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 bam,
All
bam.
right, we're blaming them.
Yeah.
That's their fault. All right.
Anyways, that's my list, guys. We
Good
had a good.
list.
Cool.
That
Yeah.
was a good
Now,
good
Ken, when
batch.
you do the thumbnail for this video, you could
Yeah.
put Pantera killed the 90s.
Pantera killed Metallica.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyways,
that's funny.
well, Jason, I want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I had a blast. This was
Great.
a really good. This was a long one. Holy
Oh
crap! You might
yeah,
have to cut it
Yeah.
up into 2 or 3.
well, we had to, and I can. What do we got on the horizon?
All right, so I'll put on my Carnival Barker hats, and we're going to be celebrating Halloween next week. So we've decided to do an album that I think is fitting for the Gold Tide, as I like to call it. We're doing Rain in Blood, which is
Oh,
a pure masterpiece.
whoa!
And I know Billy and I have discussed this album on another podcast previously, but now we're gonna do it again, and we're gonna really dig deep into this like absolutely stunning killer album. And
Yeah.
there's a lot to talk about with Rain and Blood, so that's kind of fitting for a Halloween show. And we're also gonna do like a top 10, but we decided to do like a top 10 of horror elements in thrash metal. So it could be anything from I don't know, a song, it could be the style, it could be cover artwork. So we thought that'd be a fun little exercise to talk about for our top 10. So that's going to be what we're doing next week.
Awesome.
And also, because we're kind of, because Horror Metal Sounds is obviously our birthday is October 31st. We do have up posted our trick or treat video, which right now is like at 5,000 views. So that blew up big time. People are loving it. And we are going to be releasing one special video on Halloween, 3 of a gruesome pair. So that would be a fun video to see on Halloween. But that's what we have planned for next week.
Awesome.
Nice.
On that, guys, do you have anything else?
No.
Nope.
Well, good night, and like that's been some heavy metal. See you guys next week.
Awesome. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
cool.
No
Thanks.
problem.
Peace.